Big Ten is back, and the Buckeyes are back. We got Stephanie Oti on the line from who's joined us a number of times, but it's been so long, Stephanie. This is amazing to track you down again and catch up with you. How you doing today?
Good. It's so funny that when the last time we did this, I was fresh out of college. I was buying groceries for ESPN. Now I got to do some work with them, but it's so funny just how early on in my career I was when I first came across your platform. And
yeah,
where we are now, I'm back in Columbus covering Ohio State. So such a full circle type thing.
Yeah. So before we dive into the Buckeyes, we know that's one of your first loves, and that's the way we connected. And as you mentioned before we started to record, the way people know you and connect you is you just know Ohio State football. We're just going to talk Buckeyes, but where have you been since we last talked in terms of your career stops?
Yeah, so I got my first on-air job in Dallas. Not a traditional start to your career. You usually go to a small market. I was like, nope, we'll just go big. Let's go to the top 5 market. And I was very fortunate. I got a break sideline reporting with the Dallas Mavericks affiliate team on Fox Sports Southwest. We had a lot of players get caught up, so I had opportunities to do Dallas Mavericks work as well on top of that. So that was my breakthrough. That's how I got my first start. And then since I started from the top, I needed to get, the roots down. I needed to know how to do everything when it came to broadcasting, not just talking on camera. So in Chicago, I became an MMJ sports anchor. I did a lot more behind the scenes on top of on camera. As an MMJ, you go out, you do the whole thing for yourself. You bring your camera, you shoot it, report it, cover it, bring it back in the studio, and I also anchored. And that was the job I had before I moved back to Columbus to cover Ohio State on the Football Fever. Still here, still covering Ohio State. So it's been fun. And as I talk with more and more broadcasters, I have my own podcast now, and I talk with individuals throughout the industry, from agents to doctors to other broadcasters, athletes, coaches. And it's funny that a lot of them do have a full circle moment where they do get to come back to their home team and do some work there. So I'm fortunate I get to be one of them.
Yeah, your experience sounds much like my first several years, where on the business card it looked impressive, sports anchor, sports director, so forth, anchor, but going out, shooting, writing, editing, having to do everything, one-man band. And that's where you get the great experience. So Stephanie, I'm sure you, along with the rest of Buckeye Nation, were heartbroken for several weeks and dying with the daily drama of the fight of the parents, the coaches, the players trying to get Big Ten football back after the revised schedule was released and then pulled back just a couple days later with the cancellation of the season. And during most of that time, based on what the Big Ten was telling us from the commissioner on down, from the very highest levels, it didn't look good for a long time. And they made it under the wire.
Yeah, the way it played out was the most surprising part. The actual act of canceling it, I wasn't too surprised about. It was funny. I actually had a dental surgery that day, and I knew they were going into the meeting, but I knew prior to that it was going to be canceled. But I remember right before I went under the anesthesia, I'm telling doctors, I'm like, okay, just get it done. I need to be out by 10 a.m. And by the time I woke up, it wasn't announced just yet. But the whole process was chaos. But the day it all went down, I just happened to be going under anesthesia. So yeah, that added a new layer to it. But yeah, I mean, especially when it came to social media, we kind of talked about this before, but there will be accounts out there with sources, and no one knows who to believe. And there's critics everywhere. And it was brutal. And I know it's such an emotional toll on the guys at Ohio State, especially considering the last game they played at, the Fiesta Bowl, was a brutal loss. It was not fun to walk out of. The locker room was the saddest thing I've ever seen. And they had to carry that with them. And then to have it ripped away, not get to redeem yourself after some of those guys had come back another year, Shaun Wade especially, it was not pretty. So it's been a roller coaster. I mean, Coach Day even had the guys take a day off. They're like, okay, we need to regroup. We need to get our mental state in check. So it's been a whirlwind, but they've had phenomenal support from the staff, from each other, from their families too. So it was a unifying moment, but man, it was brutal. Definitely.
And you bring up the passion of a Shaun Wade, and we'll put Wyatt Davis in that bucket as well, as two guys that could have, even once the season was declared that it was going to be played, could have said, we already made our decision. They're going to be high NFL draft selections. We need to work out. We need to prepare. We need to get ready. And we can do that. We've already made that decision. But for them to come back obviously shows the commitment to the rest of their teammates, to Ryan Day, and the university.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and I talked to some agents about that too. We kind of joked, do we think that, because Sean Wade announced that he was leaving or opting out or whatever, just a day or two before the season came back, and we joked, we're like, maybe he just said that to, give the Big Ten the nudge, like, hey, like we need to get this done, because they kept saying they were going to announce it and then they postponed that. But, when you think about wanting to play for a team, man, Ryan Day just proved again why he's one of the best recruiters. Every guy would want to play for Ryan Day after the way he defended his team, went to bat, and even Frost in Nebraska was another one. When you have an environment like that, when there's chaos going on outside the road, and then you get to go and work under a guy like Coach Day, yeah, you want to play for that. That's why I think guys were bought in. Justin Fields said he never considered leading or leaving, and especially as a Heisman contender, you have a lot to play for. And I think it was brutal, but the culture at Ohio State just shined. And I talked about this the other day on another podcast, that when you see guys leave from other schools that don't return, maybe it does speak to the culture there. I mean, Ohio State is elite in every way, and the culture is a huge part of that.
I think Ryan Day has showed us just a different side here since pretty much that Clemson loss, in that when he was the offensive coordinator calling plays, he exudes the intellectual type, the football X's and O's intellectual type, which he certainly is. He knows the game through and through, and one of the facets that makes him as good as he is. But to see how passionate he was after they lost to Clemson, and now seeing his passion going through this process of the adversity and fighting for his players and fighting for and understanding this could be special and this could be a special team, and we really want to go to the mat to play. We've just seen more. I'm sure it was there before, there's no question, but when you're an offensive coordinator, you're just kind of behind the scenes, and you're not the front man, and you're just the guy, again, calling the plays and the X's and O's guy versus the front man. And now we get to see how much he truly cares.
Oh yeah. And the players will say that too. And Coach Meyer put this into place before he left, was he would email the parents, and because Coach Meyer had a daughter who played at the college level, and he wanted to hear from the coaches. And so that was something that was important at Ohio State, and that was instilled there. So having the communication with the families and keeping everyone informed, staying up to date, like checking in on the guys and just seeing how they're doing, even when they're away. Because it was a struggle. I mean, you had to figure out how to work out without a gym at times. So there was just so many obstacles in the way that we just haven't seen before. And so he had to think outside the box and help the guys out where he could. And it prevailed. I mean, his players were greatly appreciative of that. And when you think about motivating players, being internally motivated is probably the most important part. You can't motivate someone who just doesn't want to be there. But that's not the case at Ohio State. Everyone wants to be there. And it's primarily because of the foundation that Ryan Day put into place. He's the leader of that team, and he has proven a point like, hey, we all want to be here. And they're proving that they have the talent. He says that they're a once in a lifetime team. And when you believe in your team to that extent and you don't even get the opportunity to play for a national championship, that was the hardest part. And at the protest the parents had, they don't want to play in November. They don't want to play in January. They want to play now because they want to play for a national championship. That's the whole reason why that they were fighting so hard, is because they believe that they are the team to do it.
Yeah, the Big Ten averted disaster. Talking about playing in the spring when no one would have cared. People would have watched. There would have been a semblance of the population that would have watched. But to think, okay, there was already a national champion crowned. What does this really mean? And if the Pac-12 have been in play, well, there's the weakest of the Power Fives that you're the only other conference playing. You're going to play some kind of Rose Bowl championship. And then when it was moved up and rumored to be played, like you say, starting in November, but not enough games that could fit in for that would have been the worst case scenario, I believe, to be playing kind of like
miss
this.
It.
Yeah, to play like this JV schedule while everybody's playing.
That's what
varsity.
Saban said. He goes, would it be JV?
Yeah, exactly. That would even highlight the poor decision that, okay, how odd would it be that we're watching Big Ten games on the same day as we're watching everybody else, knowing that these games really don't count? So anyway, regardless, that's all averted. They're in under the wire. There's going to be debate over how many games are played and how many reasonably need to be played to factor into the college football playoff and all that. But as you stated, what Ryan Day was saying about this being a special team and possibly a special season, do you have any concerns? If you do, where do those lie?
My biggest concern is with those pandemic protocols. The 21-day return is huge. That's 3 games, and there's no wiggle room at all. 8 games in 8 weeks. And the Big Ten was preaching when they put the original schedule out before they canceled it, was we did this for all the wiggle room. So if we need to move things around, we have that flexibility. They completely don't have that anymore. And so Ohio State has been, they've been policing themselves well. Like they're completely bought in, that they're dedicated to playing a game, but their opponent could miss out on playing a game. Therefore, Ohio State doesn't get another W on their schedule. So, I mean, there's a lot of things they can't control, which is probably the most frustrating part. And that would be my biggest concern. And Ohio State does have depth in some areas. We've definitely seen some great 5-star recruits coming to this 2020 class. But there's outliers. And I think one thing that we've been hearing a lot about was that the defensive players are practicing many different positions. And at a year like that, or a year like this, that's huge, because a guy could be out 3 weeks for a positive test when he's not really feeling sick, and you got to make it work. So it's going to be tricky. And I think it's something that's out of their hands right now. And especially when it comes to their opponent. And this is the tweet I was telling you about, was when it came to the Michigan game, it was kind of a joke, but people had their fun with it, was the Ohio State Michigan game, the rivalry game's always at the end of the schedule. And so if Michigan already has a loss on their schedule, what are they playing for in that rivalry game in a condensed schedule? Why don't they just go out and be negligent, and then they can't play and sabotage Ohio State so that they won't get an additional win against their rival on their schedule? So that was mainly a joke, but there's a huge issue when it comes to Ohio State can do all they can and, not get the test that will prevent them from playing, but their opponent, you never know. So I think that's definitely the trickiest part when it comes to this season in particular.
Yeah, if the season is played in its entirety or something close to it, to where maybe we're missing the Rutgers Maryland game or a few games that aren't going to count toward a championship, then the Big Ten will have dodged a bullet. But as you mentioned, it's odd that they were the forerunners of, let's get on the field first. They were the ones to say, we're setting this first week of September to build all this flexibility. And then it turns out where they're trying to cram 8 games into 8 weeks. So hopefully they can do it. I love the format of the championship weekend, where you play the championship game and then you see the rest of the teams, and it's kind of a wild card weekend where we don't know who's going to play whom until the previous Saturday's games are complete. So that's kind of a nuance that hopefully is going to take place, and we're going to be able to see the games. So let's say we do play a season near its entirety. I think we're at about, I counted 79 of 95 of the college football games have been played. So that makes 16 of 95 canceled. But we get a season in the Big Ten. Who's the biggest threat? Is it Penn State?
I would say so. But when you look at what the game will look at this year, no fans at Happy Valley. They've had players opt out. It's not working in Penn State's favor. If they were loaded, it were any other circumstances, then that'd be a great game. But Penn State's foiling up now, so that game won't look like it should have looked, and that's definitely working into Ohio State's favor.
Absolutely. Got Stephanie Odie on the line, sports reporter, anchor, Dallas, Chicago, now landed back in Columbus, talking Ohio State football with us. Stephanie, we appreciate you stopping by. It's great discussion. Great to see you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me. Always a great time.